Hello guys and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to improve your integrated Intel HD graphics. So let's get started. First, let's get started with the driver optimizations. So if you got back like 2 years ago, you will find that there was custom drivers for Intel HD, and they were called PHDGD. But that project for some reason just disappeared and their site went down. You can still get their drivers from external mirrors, but I tested that. They are just not competing anymore with the stock drivers. Intel made some optimizations to their drivers that made them much better. But first, let's get the stock Intel HD drivers on your laptop. As most laptop manufacturers just put their drivers on it. So you will just search for Google for your graphics driver model and write Intel stock driver. Then you will download the .zip version and extract it, of course, to a location that you know. Then head over to this PC. Right click on that and just head to manage, then go to device manager and choose display adapters. Right click on your Intel HD graphics and update driver, press on let me pick and then have disk. Then browse your computer to the extracted files and get inside the folder called graphics. You will find a .inf file. Select that and run the update. After that, just reboot your computer and you should be good. I would also recommend to turn off Windows Automatic Driver install, as sometimes it just rolls back your driver. So I'll probably leave a link on how to do that in the description. And please keep in mind that not always the latest driver improve performance. They might hurt it. I personally got better performance on the driver version 19.8.15 4835, and I personally got that on an Intel HD graphics 5500 with a Core i3 5005U. So if you have the same configuration as me, this driver will perform much better. But if you have a different configuration, you should test it yourself. So before we dive deep into this, I'm going to use 3 benchmarks: Heaven and GTA 5 and CSGO. So Heaven is a synthetic benchmark. I'm using it with the basic preset. So you have that really heavy load that will show us any improvement. GTA V is like an action game style, so it will be a good representative to that. And CSGO is just a good representative of the esports category. So first you need to know that most Intel graphics don't come with VRAM or come with something around 124 megabytes. So it has to share system RAM. So if you can upgrade your RAM, you should just do that. It will automatically improve your performance overall. In example, I was having stuttering issues in Fortnite, that whatever I do, from changing the resolution to the internal resolution, changing the game configuration files, it just was so stuttery and I couldn't play it really. And I only got it to work when I upgraded to 8 gigs of RAM. So if you can upgrade your RAM, just go for it. It's a guaranteed improvement. So with that knowledge, we can easily figure out that if we can't upgrade our RAM, just free up some more. Close background stuff and anything that you really don't want. Just open Task Manager and close any nonsense you see there. It's a big improvement. So in the next step, you will need to install a program called Intel Extreme Tuning Utility. So I used this program pack to undervolt my laptop CPU and get better thermal performance. So I'll leave a link to this video in the video description. You can watch that if you have thermal throttling issues. This will really improve it and might get rid of thermal throttling overall. So we are going to use a method to decrease the impact of something called power limit throttling. alongside our undervolt method. So to see if you have a power limit throttling issues, just stress test your GPU and just leave it for like 5 minutes. If you see power limit throttling, it will just power limit the power that's traveling to your CPU and GPU. In most cases it's locked at 15 watts. So how we can get rid of that? So we actually can't get rid of that completely, but we can just improve how it's affecting our CPU. So you go to advanced tuning, then you look for turbo boost short power max, and just match that to turbo boost power max. This will limit the voltage going into your CPU to the same limit as the power limit, but it will not affect your CPU as much. So your GPU clocks will be lower, as if they were power limited, but your CPU clocks will be much higher, so we should see an improvement there. So we are not bottlenecked by your GPU and CPU. So here is some before and after benchmark. GTA on an 800 by 600 low settings with shadows disabled from low spec gamer. Before we got a minimum frame rate of 1 frame per second, an average FPS of 27 frames per second, and a maximum of 83. After that we got a minimum also in 1 frame per second, an average of 28, and a maximum of 60 frames per second. It should be noted that before the maximum frame rate was higher, but there was a lot of micro stuttering. This was very annoying, especially if police is chasing you. So in the final scene there was a lot of micro stuttering, but after as this scene is especially CPU bound, and if we were power limit rolling and the CPU clocks are going way down, so it just stutters. After we apply our method that improved our CPU clocks, most of the micro stuttering is gone, and the gameplay overall is much smoother. So CSGO with lowest settings was 1280 by 720, and all the recommended changes in the FPS benchmark. Before we got a minimum of 4 FPS while we were in the smoke, an average FPS of 32, and a maximum FPS of 71 frames per second. After we applied our method, we got a minimum FPS of again 4, also in the smoke scene, an average FPS of 33, maximum of 73. Heaven, before we got a minimum FPS of 8, maximum FPS of 22, an average FPS overall of 12 frames per second, and a total score of 314. After we applied our method, a minimum FPS of 9 frames per second, a maximum of 23 frames per second, and an average of 13 frames per second, but a total score of 329. And some of you will say that 1 frame on average is not a big improvement, but it's not all about frame rates, it's about frame times. And what basically frame times is just how long a frame is being displayed. So if you have bad frame time, you'll get stuttering gameplay. So you may have 60 frames displayed in 1 second, but their times are inconsistent, so you get the stuttering effect. So after we applied our method, it really helped with this micro stuttering, as it was caused by our low CPU clocks. So let's continue tweaking. So something that a lot of people would say is to turn off Superfetch. It will save RAM, but it actually don't. So Superfetch is actually something that automatically puts some files into your RAM in a cost of 5 to 10 seconds of boot time, and that's it. This is all about Superfetch. So if your system is hungry for RAM, Superfetch will just automatically remove those files from your RAM and move them to the page file. So you shouldn't disable it, because if your system is not RAM hungry, Superfetch will speed up app launch time by a lot. but it's not harmful to your game if you're running into a RAM bottleneck. What you can do is to disable Windows visual effects. They don't make your game faster by much, but it will generally speed up your computer. So you can just right click on this PC, then Properties, Advanced System Settings, then Performance Settings, and disable everything, but I recommend you don't disable show thumbnails instead of icons, and smooth edges on screen fonts. And if you are not on Windows 10, you might also want to enable show visual effects on Windows Elements if you don't want that XP look. So remember what I said about saving RAM? So one method of doing that is just to disable startup programs. If you are on Windows 10, it's in the Task Manager, but if you are on something older, you will have to get to the Run menu, type in msconfig, then Startup, and disable anything that you don't want. It will save you time, so every time you boot you don't have to get into your task manager and close everything. But actually that's not everything that starts with your system. So to show everything that starts, we'll need to use a Microsoft program called AutoRuns. So I'll leave a link to that in the video description. But don't just go and disable everything there. Believe me, there is a lot of Windows components that if you disable will mess up your Windows installation. And also don't mess up with the context menu. That's the right click menu, so this shouldn't affect any performance. What I recommend is to just reboot your computer, start AutoRuns and the task manager on split screen, and just search for the running apps that you see on the task manager, search for them in the AutoRuns app and disable them if you don't want them, of course. And one last thing, if you are on 4 gigs of RAM, you might consider to end Windows Explorer from the task manager before you start the game. So just go to task manager, right click on Explorer and then end, and now you will notice that all of Windows UI is gone, and that's actually saves a ton of RAM. So to navigate to your game, just press File and Run, type in C double periods and forward slash, then press enter, navigate to your game, open it. Before it just start and take the whole screen, close the Explorer window. So after you played your game and exited, and you want to get the UI back, just type Explorer and the Run menu and it will come back. Believe me, it's really worth it if you are being RAM bottlenecked. And now let's get to the biggest and the most dangerous optimization of them all. So please, if you don't know what you are doing, don't do this step. And why is that? Because it's really dangerous if you don't know what you are doing. Because we are actually going to disable Spectre and Meltdown protection. I really don't have the time to explain to you what those are, but you probably heard of them in the recent headlines. So we are going to actually use an official Microsoft way to disable those security settings. So I'll leave a link on how to do that in the video description. And guys, I'm really not responsible if you got yourself a virus because of this, but I will just say that it's actually improving the CPU performance a lot. And if you are really searching for that, I think you're probably smart and that you can get yourself infected by any of those. So I benchmarked again and disabled those results. So I disabled the Spectre and Meltdown protection, and then I benchmarked again. So the results were basically the same, improving 1 frame on average and a much higher max, of course. So, but this time actually GTA 5 didn't stutter at all in the police scene, and I actually played the game and I didn't get any stuttering across 1 hour of gameplay. So it really helps. So disabling those will give you a lot of performance, but it comes with a risk. And the only benchmark here that will show us the improvement in like frames and scores is Heaven, because it's a really hard workload, so it benefits from everything that you do. So the results after we disable that with a minimum FPS of 8.6 and a maximum of FPS of 23.7 and a total score of 334. Before we did disable the Spectre and Meltdown performance, but we have the power limit method. We were getting 329, so that's 5 points improvement. This is really a lot in heaven, especially on a low-end system like this. So thanks guys for watching. I've been working hard on this, so I hope you liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe for more content. See you in the next one.